Janet Kelly is a name well known in Republican politics in Virginia. Currently, she's serving as Secretary of Health under Governor Youngkin. It's the second time she's been tapped for a powerful cabinet seat. This round, she's spent fighting the fentanyl epidemic and raising a red flag about the dangers of screens and social media. Today, Kelly gets candid about the biggest threats to public health in the Commonwealth and whether her career plans after this will again lead back to the state capitol. All right. Hi, Janet.
Nice
Welcome.
to see you.
Nice to see you. Full disclosure, Janet is my neighbor. I'd also say she's my friend.
Likewise.
We hang occasionally at Stir Crazy on MacArthur Boulevard. And we mingle in the space of sometimes talking politics, sometimes talking whatever passion project you're working on, talking about our kids. But today
That's the best part.
Yeah, it is. Today we're going to talk about you, though. We're going to do a deep dive. And well, first of all, just tell our listening audience, give us the lay of the land, your job, what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my current title is Secretary of Health and Human Resources for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I am your Secretary of Health. I don't have a medical background at all, but if you...
I think a lot of people are surprised to learn
I know they are.
They're like, is she a doctor?
I always joke around. Wearing a white suit coat is the closest thing I will ever get to being a medical doctor. That is not my forte. But if you want to talk about behavioral health, that's my jam. And of course, that's where a lot of the Commonwealth is struggling right now and why I got this job.
So Youngkin specifically sought you out as having this role. And I know you answered the call. He was very direct about that. Why do you think, he would sort of break the mold of having someone with a medical degree or somebody in the science field? Why did he choose you?
Well, you'd have to ask him, but and I don't know that it's fair to say.
Why did he tell you he chose you?
Okay, well, I don't know that it's fair to say that he sought me out. I think he was very happy with his previous secretary, John Littell, who got promoted, or as I like to joke, demoted to chief of staff because this is a great job. And John was doing a great job as Secretary of Health, and he's brilliant, just so smart, emotionally intelligent, great leader, one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. But the previous chief of staff was ready to get a break. He had been in the job 2.5 years, and so John got elevated, and I had been in the cabinet before. There were 18 months left in the administration. I do have a background in behavioral health and child welfare. And so I think as he was looking around at people that he thought would do it and could do it, my name came to his head, and I said yes. We come from a long line of public servants. My husband's a veteran. I've been in public service for off and on 25 years. And we just have a mantra that when you're asked to serve, you serve. So I said
Well, and
yes.
this isn't the first time you've been asked. Governor Bob McDonnell also tapped you for Secretary of the Commonwealth.
Right.
And what was answering that call versus answering this one? What are the differences?
It's very different. The jobs are very different, first of all. Very different. Secretary of the Commonwealth, it's a huge job, in charge of boards and commissions and all kinds of things. But it's a staff of 30 and a budget of about $3 million. This is, and no agencies. So this job has 12 agencies and about 15,000 employees, and it composes and manages a third of the state budget. Now, most of that money has gone out the door, so please don't call me and ask for money. We've got, everything is pretty well spent by the time it gets to my
You're
desk.
buying my coffee next time.
I cannot buy your coffee with taxpayer funds, I promise. I would never do that, but I will buy you coffee. Just not with taxpayer money. So yeah, very different job, very different governors. Governor McDonnell I had worked with for 15 years when I got that job, so we shared a brain. He's like my second dad. This governor, obviously I don't know as well personally, but I'm equally as impressed as I am with Governor McDonnell. For some reasons similar and some reasons different. Governor Youngkin is, I just think he is really smart. He is a really good leader. He sees around corners. He loves the Commonwealth. He is indefatigable. We used to get complaints from the janitor staff when we first started. I was on the third floor right near his office. And the janitor staff would show up at 5:30 and be like, when are y'all leaving? And I'm like, we'll
let you know.
Be here a while.
We'll let you know.
They had to redo the contract on the janitor staff.
What were you guys working on?
I mean, the same things we're working on now till 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We work all the time.
So you guys are like arm to arm on these things. He's in the room with you hashing out issues.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
Very hands-on. Very hands-on. And I would say both he and the First Lady, who is also brilliant in her own way, they are the first word I would use to describe them is curious. You better have your facts down. You better be prepared. You never go to a meeting unless you know 4 or 5 levels down. You can kind of skate by with some people and go to the room and only have 3 levels down of facts. Not with him. You got to know everything. And he is, obviously a math whiz. He came from private equity, and your numbers better add up because he's going to find them if they don't. We had a staff dinner. I think would have been Valentine's Day, and he invites the cabinet and their spouses to come. And we got on some topic. It fortunately was not health related. It was ag related. And so Secretary Lohr is our Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry. And I think it was on horse racing, and they just kept peppering him with questions. It was like 7, 8 questions. And I felt so bad for him. And he answered all of them great.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is really good because this gives our spouses some idea of what it's like to be in a meeting with them. This is exactly what it's like.
And you're like, thank God that's not me.
Thank God it wasn't me.
Are you a math person?
Oh, no.
Yeah. No, neither am I. No. Tax and tip.
No.
That's all I got going in the math department.
Double those first 2 numbers. I'm good. That's about the extent.
I know what 15% off looks like at TJ Maxx. That's about the extent of
what else do you really need to know?
Yeah, I'm a journalist. Come on. It's the English brain. Well, that's interesting. So you guys work, in tandem on these things. That's an interesting thought. I always assumed that it would sort of be like check in when you have something to report, but not necessarily like trench work. But
we work hand in hand when there's problem solving. So when there's a big problem, he trusts me to do my job. And I'm lucky enough to have Chief Littell now in that role that I have I call it a lifeline whenever I need it. I just 15 feet below me in the building that I can reach out to. But when there is a problem to be solved, when there is, the water crisis, for example, which maybe we'll get into today. I don't know.
Let's get into it.
Okay.
What was that like?
Oh, man.
Because that is a big matter of public health. And we've got no water for a week. You've got a snowstorm. You've got elderly people. You've got babies can't get. Shortage of water bottle. It was crazy.
It was just mass chaos and stress.
Yeah.
And we all remember, right?
Yeah.
The information kept changing. Poor Mayor Avola had just been sworn in.
I know you can't put that the worst start to a political career ever. We had him on this show, and not that you know that because you haven't listened to my podcast.
Because I'm serving the public almost 24/7, Catie.
You might want to listen to it. It is pretty good. He was on here and we talked to him about managing that. And, to be honest, that guy is cool as a cucumber. He kind of just said, I was like, was this the most stressful time in your life? And he's like, well, it's like I did navigate COVID.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was, and then I felt really stupid because I was like, of course, that was like years of
COVID, and isn't he like an emergency room?
He's a doctor.
Pediatrician.
Yes,
so, he's seen a lot.
Right. Plus he has like 1 million kids and,
his wife's a teacher, so he hears stories.
Right, yeah. So he was kind of like, it hit, but it wasn't like the most high ranking stress I've ever encountered. But I guess I was thinking of it more from just like the perspective of a resident. It really was stressful.
Oh my goodness.
Especially if you have young kids who are home from school
and
you have no water.
Goodness.
So what was Youngkin's, like, what was the conversation like with you? What did you guys strategize on doing?
Well, so on this topic, this is a local thing. This is a local issue.
Right.
It's really up to the city to provide clean drinking water to their citizens. And the state gets involved from a regulatory perspective, not to sound too government-y, but basically we come in occasionally when there are complaints. We look at their systems. The EPA had looked at their systems. There were long documented issues that they had, for whatever reason, the previous administrations just had not invested in. It's my understanding that they're also diverting some funding away from water systems to put in the general fund that used to go just toward water. That was in the recent report that our consultants did as an after action. And this was not a day of disaster. It felt like that. It felt like, there was a storm, power went out, the end. But that was not the situation. This has been a years long build up to, and it wasn't just components, it was culture. And anyone who wants to can go read the report. I think it's on VDH's website. I'm sure that will, I think it's 300 pages.
Our website,
Your website,
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
300 pages if you need something to fall asleep to at night. It's right up there. But yeah, it was, I'll tell you that first night, there are a lot of memories, both as a mom and as a Secretary of Health from that week. But I think the memory that sticks out the most was it was about an hour after we first got the news. And so I had to head out early that day for some reason. I had an offsite, and I got the text as I was getting in my car. And I immediately just stopped and got us bottled water for my own family, because I was like, we're not going to have any water to drink, for 24 hours. And I knew we didn't have any at home easily available. So I was like, okay, I just stopped. I got several. Nobody was
at that point,
no
stocking
one
up,
was stocking up at that point, because it was very early on. And ironically, I found out about it from a mommy text chain. So I'm telling you what, I didn't find out about it from the city.
Insider trading.
No, this is not insider trading. I found out about it from my neighbor, who, thank God, told me, And so, man, those mommy text chains, that is where the real action's at.
They can come in handy sometimes.
Sometimes
they do make me want to jump out a window, but sometimes they come in handy. I love it.
It's how I feel normal. They're so great. You need to be on my mommy text chains. I'll add you.
I don't think I need any more text chains in my life. I have a family text chain I've been trying to get off of for about 10 years.
Don't say that.
Yeah, hopefully my family's not listening. They all listen.
They probably don't
I'm just
watch
kidding.
your
I love you guys.
either.
I love the text. Anyway, so that was the water crisis.
That day we get the call stop, but then about an hour later we get word that VCU might have to shut down. And that's really when the repercussions started to dawn. So at first it was like survival mode for, kind of my own family, checking in with VDH, just figuring out what they knew when they knew it and what they were going to do. But then about an hour later, it was go time. It was like, the hospitals are going to have to, people could really be hurt and suffer and possibly even die. And they shut down surgeries, elective surgeries at some of the area hospitals. And we just immediately went into action with VDEM, which is our Virginia Department of Emergency Management, and had to get tankers sent. I think HCA, don't quote me on that, who it was, but we were able to get a tanker diverted to VCU, and ended up over the course of that week, just almost every day, we need a tanker here, we need a tanker here, we need a tanker at the VA hospital.
We're talking about tank trucks of water.
Yeah. And VCU is on a boiler system, and so they needed water to keep their heat on, because January in the middle of the storm.
Snowstorm, right.
I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. I mean, it was.
Gosh, I guess you never really think about all of those components. So I mean, I knew, obviously we knew hospitals, we knew it was affecting people, but that's interesting that you had to sort of be part of that scramble, even though you're at the state level.
It was a huge scramble. And of course, the General Assembly building, trying to get that up and running, our own building, we had to work, and there were no restrooms. And so
that's tricky.
That's tricky, but we did it. And we went down to the EOC, a lot to get stuff done. And I'm really proud of the response of our team. And the governor just showed amazing leadership throughout. He's got a really good sense of, this is a city issue. It's not our job to come in and take over. Mm-hmm. Virginia state government just can't take over every single time a locality has an issue, because we're a locally administered Commonwealth.
Right.
And I was just really impressed. That was the first time. We'd had a water issue in Orange before that. And of course, Hurricane Helene. So there were several disasters that I had watched him work. And, for someone who doesn't have an emergency management background, he is, again, cool as a cucumber. He walks that line of not taking over, but also giving support, lending support. Of course, there's no partisanship in a time like that of a disaster. You just do what needs to be done.
People need water.
Yeah, people need water.
Yeah.
And we got it to him.
Well, moving on, I know you've been working on a lot of things, had a lot of initiatives, and specifically, as you said, behavioral health, mental health, specifically with screens, which I think is a fascinating topic. Any parent, of any age child is confronted with this sort of screen dilemma, screen crisis. Their kids want to plug in, sometimes even to be connected to friends, to be connected socially to what's going on. But there's so many dangers in having your children connected that way and that often. So you have taken a huge deep dive into this. Tell me what the work you've been doing looks like, and sort of also for parents, how do you strike this balance of not completely being puritanical, shut down, removed from society, but also protecting your kids,
Such a good question. And it's a big one. It's probably the thing. I don't lose a lot of sleep because you gotta have good boundaries there. But if I could point to the biggest threat that I think is facing our Commonwealth, I absolutely think it's children's mental health, which is in turn driven significantly by social media and cell phone usage. It is a mental health crisis. It is a physical health crisis. It is a spiritual crisis. And I'll kind of go into what I mean by that in a minute. But I think it's also really important to understand that this work, this Reclaiming Childhood Task Force that the governor started, and getting cell phones out of school, that the governor were first in the nation, cell phone free schools bell to bell, which we'll also get to in a minute, is built on top of a foundation of a historic investment in behavioral health, which behavioral health is just the umbrella of mental health and substance use disorder. And for the last 3 years, thank God, we have been building that infrastructure. And so now we're really ready to tackle the children's mental health side. But just to give you some idea of what a priority behavioral health has been in this administration, the governor has invested alongside bipartisan effort in the General Assembly, $1.4 billion in this behavioral health transformation. That really is a transformation. We can talk about that more in detail in a minute. But when the Virginia Tech tragedy happened, we just passed the anniversary here a little bit ago. The General Assembly invested $49 million in our behavioral health system. And then you may recall the really just unspeakable tragedy out in Bath County with a sitting state senator who has made behavioral health now his legacy, as he should, after that incident, very tragic incident involving his own family. The General Assembly invested $149 million. And that was 10 years ago. And so fast forward, screens, addictive algorithms, cell phones are just creating almost L-shaped graphs for our kids.
Yeah, just crushing mostly self-confidence, self-worth, like with self-esteem.
I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that.
What is it?
It can be. It can be some of that, eating disorders and all of that. But 57% of teen girls say that they're chronically hopeless or sad. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds in the United States. I know it's really heavy, hard stuff.
Yeah.
You have an entire generation of kids that to me seems depressed and anxious. The anxiety rates are, through the roof.
And you can see the ties to social media with that.
No question. And if there's any doubt, Catie, the First Lady had Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the book, The Anxious Generation, in last fall to talk through. And he just performs a masterclass in that book of drawing a parallel. It is not related. It is causal. And, it all starts around 2010, 2012 when those addictive algorithms turned on. Were you on Facebook at the very beginning?
No, and thank God for that.
Thank God you weren't.
Yeah.
But if you were, it was a little nostalgic. It was sort of before the addictive algorithms were kicking in. It was like, oh, there's my best friend from college or high
Haven't
school
seen
that
her in years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it wasn't addictive.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was just sort of like watching the news,
right?
Versus watching YouTube on the news. Where every time you were finished with something else came right behind it, and it was targeting you and targeting what
your preferences and your interests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think we just cannot be naive on this at all. And listen, I have 3 kids. We struggle with this in our own house, right? I mean, there is, first of all, before I say anything else, let me just say that there is zero shame or blame on this for any parents. If you've messed up, if you gave your kid a screen too early and you know it, you're never going to hear 1 ounce of judgment from me, because we struggle with it at home too. First of all, second of all, I know
it's
how
hard to know
is.
where to draw those lines. It's really
so
hard. And then their friends have it, and it's like, well, what about my, this friend and that?
You don't
friend?
want them left out,
right?
And so I'll just say it's hard. 90% of Americans, according to the Bipartisan Policy Center, think that there's never been a harder time to be a parent. I couldn't agree more.
That's interesting.
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
And then on the same token, you've got about 75% of parents who say their kids use screens too much. And so the governor did a couple things on this. One was he got out Executive Order 33. He just got cell phones out of schools.
Yeah.
And
was that met with resistance initially from some people?
From some people, not as many as you would think, because there were certain school districts who had already decided to go forward with it that had
And the teachers have to be supportive, right? They had to be like, get him out of here.
They're literally like, they were like, I'm a policeman.
Yeah. All I do all day long is just say, put your phone away. Yeah.
All I do all day long. And you could see it in the academic standards that are falling. Now, this is Secretary of Education's lane, Amy Gadara, who does lovely, you should have her on. She does a lovely job explaining all of this, but it wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And Jonathan Haidt draws this parallel to like, imagine growing up. I'm probably a little older than you, a lot older than you, but imagine growing up when we were growing up and just carrying a full screen TV into the classroom.
Right. That's what it is.
That's absurd.
Right.
But that's functionally what kids are doing when you let them have a phone. And so we were very big. We had listening sessions. We had all these things. And as of right now, there are 107 school districts out of 121 that have already early. They don't have to do it till July 1st. They're already doing it. We went and visited, the governor and I, and actually Secretary Kennedy went and visited the Louisa County school system, who never had phones in school. So they think it's so bizarre. Like, why would you
ever need to ban it? Well, you just don't let them in the first place. Right, yeah.
So that's the school day. And then kids, the average child, this is going to blow your mind. The average child spends 33 hours a week outside of school on social media.
Oh, that's depressing too, isn't it?
So think about, like, what were you doing, Catie, when you were 14?
I was outside. I was, like, I don't know.
Little mini reporter, were you like?
I was, with my hairbrush in the mirror. That's a true story.
How did I know?
That's a fact.
Amazing.
Since 8. It's always been the calling.
But think about what your life would be like, Catie, if you had been attached to a phone instead of having that brush and practicing your skill and your craft. And you're just like, you went to be an investigative reporter at CNN. Like, where's the next Catie Beck? And
not
is she
CNN,
on her phone?
NBC. Sorry, guys.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
NBC.
She doesn't watch me again.
I don't.
I'm just kidding. I'm giving you a hard time, Janet.
I'm your biggest fan who doesn't watch you.
Yes.
I love you, not your work.
My mom is like, oh, this girl. She's listening right now. Like, oh, Janet. NBC, come on.
NBC.
So anyway,
but imagine what your life would have been
the
like.
Childhood would have been so different. And I mean, and kids need exercise, and they need sun, and they need communication. I mean, I just worry about, as a communications professional, like the ability to have a conversation. Just that. I mean, when you're constantly looking down and relying on a one-sided, how do they expect this generation to be able to communicate? It is scary. 30 plus hours a week is probably my part-time job at the ice cream store.
Well, that's
exactly
right.
And also sports, and also, just social time. I mean, all that time that you're not communicating, like, makes me nervous. But
yeah, it's sad. It's really sad. It's dehumanizing, because this is not how we were created. We're created to sit at Stir Crazy across a cup of coffee and look at each other in the eyes.
Right.
Activates our mirror neurons.
Think things.
Yes.
Spontaneously.
And resolving conflict too is a big thing for the kids. They don't know how to do that. That's literally why you're an adolescent. That's how you learn to resolve conflict. You have to practice how to be an adult. And we're taking all of those opportunities away when they're really not resolving conflict online. 59% of kids say they've been bullied online, you know? And then what was happening was they were bringing it into school the next day with their phones. Just horrifically tragic, trigger warning. But I guess it was about a month ago, a little girl in Roanoke who was 10 years old reported being bullied online, and she took her own life. I mean, this is just...
We see those stories more often than you would... Yeah.
It's just, and then, so who's going to say enough? Who's going to say, we're sounding the alarm, this is enough, we're not going to look at our phones all day in school, we're going to learn. Governor Youngkin did. We're not gonna think that it's socially acceptable to... I don't think the government should be telling people how to parent, right? Like, that's just not something I think the role of government. What the role of government is, though, is empowering parents with data and information and saying, hey, suicide's the second leading cause of death, for 10 to 14 years. And so we are, he also started something called the Reclaiming Childhood Task Force that we launched last fall at a summit here in Richmond. And it basically is tackling everything outside of school. So bell to bell, no cell phones in schools, and then reclaiming childhood. And you said it. What would my childhood have been like? Is how we're addressing the after school. And that's really about empowering parents with the right information. You can go to the website. I think it's reclaimchildhood.virginia.gov and look up. There's toolkits. There's information. There's a speech by Jonathan Haidt. We just had Arthur Brooks into town with the First Lady last month. And man, I mean, these people they're changing my life. I just started sleeping without my phone in my bedroom for the first time in probably 20 years.
Yeah.
Based on the data and the stories I keep hearing. So.
No, I mean, sleep, it deeply affects your sleep. And I know that. And I need to do what you're doing.
Well, tell me if you do.
Call to
a lot
action.
of people, I think I'm up to 5 people who've taken my little challenge.
Your challenge on? All right.
And I'll tell you, if I can do it, anybody can do it, right?
Yeah, because you have like work emails coming in, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you have to I
mean, there are people above me in the food chain that do not sleep with their cell phone in their bedroom. So if they can do it.
That's a good challenge
I can
that
do
you
it.
just laid down.
There you go.
This is also a good point to take a break.
Okay, let's do it.
We'll be right back. All right, so Janet, let's talk fentanyl. Massive, dark problem in the Commonwealth, and also something that you've had a particular focus on. What's sort of the status of the efforts there?
Well, first of all, National Fentanyl Awareness Day is, we just passed it a couple weeks back. And when the Youngkin administration first started, I think the 2021, he came in 2022, there were like 2,600 deaths. So you're talking, this is a massive problem. If someone doesn't do something about it, it's just going to get worse and worse.
A year in Virginia.
Every year in Virginia. So 5 Virginians a day, over 200 of those were kids under the age of 18. And 80% of those were not people who wanted to die. They were people who had an athletic injury and thought they were buying a Percocet online. A lot of them.
A lot of fentanyl purchases happen online.
Oh, absolutely. Snapchat. I'm just going to name names. Sorry.
Yeah, go.
Snapchat, Discord. Yeah, you're like, I'm hurt. I need a pill. They literally deliver it right to your house. And so I've met over 100 fentanyl family ambassadors in this role, and I've heard their stories. And I'll tell you a couple. One was a college kid. The Masic's son Grayson went to Clemson, and he was injured, and he, what I just said, ordered what he thought was a Percocet. It was during COVID. His family just got a call out of the blue that he had been found dead. And they didn't know for months and months because it was during COVID, and the medical examiner's office was backed up. And then they found out later that it was fentanyl, and pieced together after the fact that he had bought it off Snapchat.
And someone had delivered it?
And someone, I don't know if in his case, if someone had delivered it or if he.
That part just blows my mind. It's like an Uber Eats. Like you could just
an Uber Eats for death, honestly, because you just don't know. If that pill's going to kill you. It's like playing Russian roulette. The way that they make the pills, and they put them in blenders, and it's not equally distributed. So out of 1,000 pills that come out of that pill press, 5 of them could kill you, and the rest could be fine. But you just don't know. And so I met another family, and just it's so heartbreaking that he was an only child, and very similar, had never done drugs, but he came home over Christmas break and kind of was hanging out with some older kids. And they were at a party, and he took a pill, and he never woke up. Never woke up. And these are young kids. These were college age. I mean, they had their whole life, and these families are just fortunately giving back. But this is not a club you want to be in, right? I mean, so it's devastating. And
so how do you police that, or how do you stop it?
Oh my goodness, I'll tell you. The governor and the First Lady just went out on an all-out war on fentanyl in this administration. And I am so proud that I got to play, just a very small role in it. There were several components to it. One is awareness. The First Lady started an initiative called It Only Takes One. There's a website, itonlytakesoneva.com, where you can go, and it coaches parents through how to talk to their kids. 80% of kids said that their parents had never talked to them about fentanyl. And we ran a pilot in Roanoke, and it was wildly successful. She expanded it statewide. So one component of this is all awareness and just spreading the word. One pill can kill. It only takes one. It only takes one pill. It only takes one vape. One thing that looks like something else that you think you're taking, and it could be the last thing you do ever. And it likewise only takes one conversation. Hey, Catie, when my daughter started college, I was like, you do not take anything from anyone unless it is straight from a drugstore packaged, or your pharmacist or me. Nothing, not an Advil, not an aspirin, nothing before you start college. And so it's just, my parents didn't have to have that conversation with me, but this is the thing now. You got to talk to your kids about it. So awareness, prevention, we have done thousands of Revive trainings. There is an antidote to fentanyl overdose called Narcan. And it's super easy. Please call your local health department and get Revive trained. They'll do it at your business or church or place of worship, or you can join one that's already on the books. And it's really easy. It's not a shot. It's like Afrin. You just put it up. It's nasals, a no shot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's really easy, and it can save a life. It teaches you, to do all the things, put people on their side so that they don't choke, and all of the things that you need to know. But it doesn't take long, and you can save a life. I actually carry Narcan with me regularly, as does the First Lady. And so we really have done a huge effort in preventing these overdose deaths. And then the last component has just been the law enforcement. And I'm telling you what, Secretary Cole, that guy, he does not mess around. And the governor has empowered him to do whatever it took to lower these. We had a goal of a 20% reduction in fentanyl deaths, and I'll get to where we are in a minute. And it's embargoed until after this podcast, because the governor's announcing it tomorrow. But Secretary Cole, Secretary of Public Safety, and his team, the governor issued an executive order 26 to basically give him carte blanche authority. He's like, go, do it. Whatever you think needs to be done, do it. And they started something called Operation Free. They have recovered, and fentanyl, it's like the tip of a pin can kill you. Over 5,000 pounds of fentanyl has been recovered. So think of it, it's like enough fentanyl to kill every single Virginian 8 times over. They've recovered off the streets. And of course, it's drug cartels from Mexico. It's international crime networks. It's foreign bad actors. I mean, all these. It sounds a little nutty when I first heard it, but it's absolutely all documented and true that this is being sent to our country from people that want to harm us.
And it's working, apparently.
And it was working.
Yeah.
In Virginia, and now it's not. Virginia, because of all of these things, the governor's going to announce that the Virginia is the top state for the reduction of overdose deaths. So our goal was 20%. We're at 41% reduction in overdose deaths. We have gone from 2669 to about 1,700 just in 3 years. That's something stunning
to be proud of, I'm sure. And that's affecting it, again, these poor teens that are kind of in the middle of all of these, dangerous things. As you said, a hard time to be a parent. I mean, it affects so many people on so many levels, socioeconomic levels,
it
age
is
levels.
No respecter of persons.
Right.
It's absolutely right. It does not discriminate between rich, poor, black, white, brown. Does not discriminate.
Yeah, I can't. I am happy to hear the progress on that, because I know it's it touches everybody in some way. Child welfare. Let's talk about that. And this, I know, is your favorite topic. So that has also been a key issue for you in terms of placement, making sure children are safe. Why did this issue rise to your attention?
Well, there are two things. One, I have a personal story that just kind of put me in the middle of the child welfare world unexpectedly 12 years ago. I met a woman on the sidewalk at a mall outside of Chick-fil-A who was pregnant, and then a couple of years later ended up with her son, who was 18 months old. We tried to reunify. It just wasn't possible. And so he shares our last name. He's 14 now and doing great. But it definitely gave me a window and an education into the child welfare world, into what was working. And unfortunately, there was a lot of things that were not working, not because there aren't really dedicated child welfare workers, but for a lot of reasons.
Just backtrack a little. Had you ever thought about adoption before that moment, or was it?
Sure. I mean, 60% of Americans think that they're going to adopt one day. It's got a very positive brand. And I was like, sure. But I had just gotten married. Yeah. And I had been a single mom for 6 years. And all of a sudden we get this call out of the blue,
Yeah.
We understand you have a special relationship with this little boy for the last couple of years. He's at danger of going into foster care. Would you all consider taking custody of him? And I was like, ooh, I don't think I'm the right person. This is not the right time. I was in the cabinet. I had a big job. I just gotten married. I mean, I was giving them all the reasons that
might not
I was
work.
A terrible choice, trying to get another option, because I just didn't think I was the right choice. And the guy on the phone, he's a judge now, which we laugh about this, but he was like, why don't you go talk to your husband? I was like, do you know me? That is not the right thing to say.
Right.
First of all, I've only been married 9 days.
Right.
And this is not something you want to,
Right.
It was a very bizarre thing to say, but I did. And my husband, Ryan, is a saint. He's, like I said, a veteran, Army Ranger qualified. I mean, there are very few people who are as caring and compassionate and classy as Ryan Kelly. And so Ryan said yes. He was like, look at the story God's trying to tell with this kid. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. So we got legal custody on a Thursday. We got physical custody on a Sunday. And on the Friday in between, we found out we were expecting from our honeymoon.
Oh,
so,
my gosh.
In addition to being caring, compassionate, and classy, Ryan's also Catholic.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. He became a,
What a story.
He became a husband, stepdad, which we don't really use that word in our house anymore.
Right.
It's been 13 years.
Yeah.
Foster dad and bio dad in 21 days in 2012.
That's a busy first month of marriage.
Yeah, we're still tired.
Yeah.
But
that became a passionate issue for you just based on this.
It became personal.
Yeah.
It was really, really personal because you get to see up front, and back then, we're what's called a fictive kin family. So a kin family is like a grandma, aunt, uncle, and fictive kin is like teacher, coach, friend. And so we fall into that second category. And again, just got a front row seat to the child welfare system and saw all the need and learned a lot. We learned that Virginia at the time was 50th in permanency. We're now 47th, which means more kids age out of foster care at 18 without a family than almost any other state.
Wow. So it's still a lot of work to be done there.
Still a lot of work. And then, of course, I would say the second person that kind of brought this back to my personal radar screen during the Youngkin administration was the governor, because he heard about 371 kids were sleeping in offices the year before he became governor, and he just said, "This is not okay.
Right?
Like, we can't have this. This is not how we're going to do things." And so, kind of sat me down and said, "What do you need to do? Do you think you can fix this?" And I was like, "Honestly, I don't know. This is really complex, and this system. Like, I had been working in it at that point. I started a nonprofit in between the McDonnell administration and the Youngkin administration, and foster care and child welfare is probably the only thing I've ever done that I can say I was a failure at. Like, I didn't meet my own expectations because it's just hard. It's complex. It's dealing with broken families and broken people, and it's under-resourced. It's not many people know about all of this, and so I was honestly kind of ready to do something else when I came into the administration, and he just said, "Well, I need you to do this." Right. So I was, of course, when you're asked to serve, you serve.
Steered you right back in the direction.
Right back in it. And he launched the Safe and Sound Task Force, and he just said, "You got to stop this." And we're not reducing, we're not eliminating, we're ending this phenomenon of kids sleeping in offices. And I was like, okay, well,
when you say offices, you mean like administrative buildings?
Yeah, local DSS offices, like right here in Richmond. Kids
just
were
had
sleeping.
no place
there
to
was
put them.
Nowhere else to put them. And these are not, this is not the innocent 8-year-old whose parents may have gotten killed in a car wreck and doesn't have a family. These are kids who are highly, highly, highly have unmet needs, and a lot of them were teenagers, significant behavioral health needs. They had been in the system a long time.
Right.
It would have been really hard for some of these kids to go into a family, but it's not okay to have them in an office.
Yeah.
Or, a hotel room, or at worse, an ER.
Right.
And so he just said, "You got to end this." And it's one of the things I'm proudest of, certainly professionally. We put together this beautiful core team, this beautiful task force. We all work together across agencies and secretariats to get it done. And I can walk you through the details later, but we reduced the number of kids sleeping in offices and hotels and ERs by 89% in 90 days. So that just goes to show you, it was really, I think, a leadership problem. It was just not to shame the previous administration at all. They certainly had their hands full with COVID, but this was, it was hard. Don't get me wrong. But it was doable. And the fact that we did it in 90 days shows you that. And then we sustained it at 76%. And then the next year it was another 13%. So it is now the exception, not the rule. I'm not going to say it never happens, but it certainly doesn't happen with the regularity that it did before.
And what about sort of the safety issue on, we spoke about that before this podcast, about sort of, the pattern of returning children to homes where they shouldn't be. That actually, believe it or not, was an issue when I was a reporter here in Richmond. We did a lot of stories on DSS and that pattern. And it sounds like it's come back around.
I don't know that it ever went away.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Why is that? Because they want to keep their numbers low so they don't want to have to do placements. And
I think it's not an easy answer. It's not a simple answer. I think you've got child welfare workers who see more hard things in a day than I'll ever see in my life. And oftentimes, especially on the front lines in those child protective services units, you've got, let's say it should be a team of 20 and there's a team of 7. So imagine if they said, okay, Catie, I'm glad you're having fun with this little podcast. It's going gangbusters. We want you to do 7 today.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not sustainable. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I also think there is a pendulum in child welfare that kind of swings back and forth toward reunification and keeping families together, family preservation at all costs.
Right.
And then at the other end of the spectrum is child safety. And of course, I like to think I'm somewhere in the middle. But when the pendulum swings in sort of the philanthropic world and the think tank world and the child welfare world, you can get too far to one side of those walls. And I think maybe we've overcorrected.
In what direction?
Toward the family preservation. I think, when I hear things like people that I know,
send them back.
Yeah, people that I know and respect saying, what does it take to get a kid removed these days? That's a red flag to me. And in Virginia, again, none of this is simple. And let me also say, none of this is to cast judgment or aspersions on any child welfare worker. I respect and admire those people. They have jobs that none of us could do, honestly. I mean, first responders to the human condition, really hard job. So, but I think the choices aren't there. There's not just an abundance of foster families who are ready to say yes at any point. And it's like, okay, it's 9:00 at night. I've tried to find a family for them. I can't.
Right.
Are they going to sleep in an office? Are they, what's going to happen to that kiddo? And I do think, so sometimes there's no choice. I also think that the data is so compelling that it's best for families to stay together and the kids don't want to be removed, even when there's horrific abuse going on. And so it's hard. I mean, and breaking up a family I'd put it right below the death penalty on the things that the government can do that are, like almost an irreconcilable difference, irreversible damage, you know? I mean, it is really serious to break up a family. And so you want to have the weight of that decision. You want that to be weighing in the back of your mind. Like, this is going to be traumatizing to this kid to be removed in addition to everything they've gone through. And so the family should get the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, I'm not sure that our aspirations of healthy families and stable families we're not there. Yeah. We're not there. And so what does that do to the kid in the meantime? So I have a lot of questions and a lot of things that I think need to be done this year before we leave in 9 months to address it. And I know the governor just wants safe kids. He wants stable families and he wants a sustainable system. And, we're going to be doing all we can to make sure that happens over the next 9 months.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike. Like I said, that was many years ago that I was reporting those stories. And it was an ER doctor who called me and said, I'm seeing the same children with fractures from their parents like over and over again. And somehow they just keep getting returned to the same people. Like, what can you, and it was a hard story to tell, honestly. We had to use a lot of anonymous sources to tell it because a lot of it was protected by HIPAA. And, but we did get some significant changes done at that department through the reporting. But it is really a difficult subject.
It is.
You don't want to send
a lot of hard stuff today, Catie.
Yeah,
nobody's going to listen to this podcast.
Well,
they turned it off.
This is health. It's health, right? It's like
it's health and it's humans.
Yeah, and it's humans, right? Yeah. So it's not exactly light topics.
But they're important ones.
But
they're
we're going
really
to turn to a
important
light topic after this break. We're going to talk about your future.
Oh gosh.
We'll be right back.
Can't wait.
All right. So you mentioned, the fact that you're going to be out of a job in 9 months. What does that mean? What are you going to do? Well, besides hang out at Stir Crazy with me?
I know. Think of all the coffee dates. Well, so Catie, my plan A.
I know what you're going to say. I know
was that you and I were going to start a podcast.
Okay. You say that and then you don't even listen to my podcast.
Because I don't have time because now I'm Secretary of Health.
So you're saying if I had made you my partner in podcasting, you would be listening?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, I know. I would be co-hosting with you.
My mistake. But then we wouldn't have all these interesting topics to talk about.
That's true.
Maybe in 9 months.
9 months.
So anyway,
okay, got it.
But if my seat in my co-hosting chair isn't available, what is your ideal next step? Is it in politics?
I have what I would like, and then I have sort of what what God wants. And they're not always the same thing, not to be too faithy, but I've never had a 5-year plan. I've never had a professional plan because whatever I could have dreamed or hoped or imagined, he just blew out of the water. And so my faith is very important to me, and I try to be in the center of God's will, whatever that is. And so I've learned to not say no to anything. I've learned to keep my heart open and my ears open for opportunities. I have 0 plans. I have absolutely no idea.
0 plans after this ends.
No idea. Which I guess to typical people, that seems so bizarre. But to political people, I came from a campaign background in my 20s. This is just how life works.
Yeah, you do kind of get the next thing right at the tail end of the thing.
Yeah.
But if you were asked to serve in another governmental or political capacity, would you?
I'll never say never. I really, I've got 6 years of parenting left. My youngest is 12. And so what I'm hoping that I can do is find something in the private sector that has a lot of flexibility. She's going to be playing volleyball this fall, and I want to go to her games, and she's playing soccer next spring, and I want to be there. And I don't want to always have to feel like I'm doing a bad job at either being a mom or being a boss, which I know that is the quintessential tug of war that every working mom struggles with.
It is.
It's exhausting. My oldest is 21, and I've been doing that struggle for off and on 21 years. And sometimes I get it right, and sometimes I don't. But so that's a great non-answer. I don't know.
It is a non-answer.
I don't know because I don't have an answer. I don't know what I'm doing next.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned when we were talking about this topic before that you feel like, when you first kind of entered the political forum in Richmond, it was sort of a different arena. It looked different. Why does it look different today than it did when you came before? Is it rougher? Is it meaner?
Yeah.
Okay. It's meaner.
And there's a saying that politics is downstream of culture. Yeah. So I think it's sort of an indication that that's sort of where our culture is. Unfortunately, I wish it weren't so, but I think it is.
Less dignified, less.
Yeah. A little more crass, a little more, keyboard couragey. You just get on and say whatever. And I'm not sure. I can blame that on social media too, I guess, because I blame everything on social media.
It's a good target.
It's the source of all the world's ills. No, I'm just kidding. It just gives a venue for what humans think and say. So, at the end of the day,
it's a reflection, right?
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but that's where we are. So I remember I was in DC for a year, the 6 months before 9/11 and the 6 months after. And I just remember being like, ugh, this is not my scene. I had been in Virginia politics for 2 years, and I was already like, this is not for me. And I got back to Virginia as soon as I could. And now, unfortunately, I would say that Richmond's a lot more like DC than it was when I first started. And I honestly, I don't know why that is.
What is it that makes it more like DC? Is it more harsher? More,
it's hard to describe. I think
selfish.
I think, when I first started, all I know is to compare it to my own experience. When I first started there was a lot more ability, I think, to make mistakes and not be hounded for it. And
cancel culture.
Yeah, culture really wasn't a thing. Yeah. And, you were friends with people on the other side of the aisle. You had dinner with them. I still do that just because that's how I started. And I like to think that my job is not the most important thing about me, and I do value those relationships. I think if you talk to people on the other side of the aisle, they'll tell you stories and say, yeah, I remember when I was sick and Janet brought me soup, or, things like that. I think that's really important. At the end of the day.
You don't have to see the other side as the enemy.
No.
Right.
No. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, the other side does some things that really I just completely disagree with. And I'm sure I do things that they completely disagree with. But everything we've talked about today, Catie, children's mental health, cell phones in schools, fentanyl, child welfare, all of these things I work with Democrats on all day long. Our kinship bill that we set up to actually support families who take in kids from foster care so they don't have to go into foster care passed the House and the Senate unanimously.
Yeah, you've had a rosy sort of existence. I don't know.
Have I? It doesn't feel rosy.
In terms of bipartisan, when you told me you're I have had bipartisan support on all these things, I'm I don't know how many other secretaries could make that claim. I know that you require some of, but health is one of those topics where I think it's easier for the parties to align on a common goal. You know what I mean? So, like you said, it is a good gig if you can, because you kind of stay I don't know, the combat sport part of it is not necessarily like as present in your daily.
It used to be. I mean, I was a political hack man in my 20s, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
I ran that statewide race when I was 28, and I loved every second of it. I loved the elbows. I loved it. But then something happened, I think, about the time I got my son.
Yeah.
Ann Holton, First Lady Ann Holton, wife of a Democratic governor. She ended up being a cabinet secretary under a Democrat. She and I worked together on this campaign for adoption, and it was almost like there are some things that just transcend politics, you know, and most of what I work on, I would say, falls into that category. Yeah. So I think that's about the time when I was like, I think I need to start using my skill set and my talents and my abilities, not for good, because I don't think what I did in politics was bad. I got an amazing man elected as governor in 2010 and attorney general in 2005, you know. But there are some things that transcend politics, and that's what most of what I get to work on, which is great.
So is it fair to say that if you had your choice, you would prefer to leave this arena?
Yeah, for a season, for sure. Yeah. Well, while my youngest is home, I got 6 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's not like it's going anywhere.
No, there's still going to be problems. It'll be whatever the next fentanyl is in 6 years, you know.
Well, we'll be talking about it at Stir Crazy.
All right.
And then maybe here, too.
I can't wait.
But thank you for coming on today,
Thank
Janet.
you.
It was fun to see you.
Thank you.
So
I'm going to go back now
by.
and listen to all your episodes.
Sure you are. There'll be a quiz. All right. Thanks for joining us on Untold. We'll see you next time. Untold is a production of WTVR CBS 6, executive produced by Mike Bergazzi and Catie Beck, directed by Nick Maharaj and Brock Taylor, and edited by Curtis Akers. Follow the show on Instagram at Untold_WTVR.
I'm Rich Marr, host of the VPM podcast, RVA's Got Issues.
Power grid outages.
There was that water crisis that happened.
More housing?
At least you should get paid $15 an hour, at least.
Download it wherever you get your podcasts.